So, hello everyone, welcome to Cloud Robotics Working Group meeting. Today we're going to hear about the originally called extraction language and is now called Bagel, which we were discussing that we love the name, but let's hear more about Bagel itself from its creators. Over to you.
Yeah, so I'm just going to walk people through some slides. Can I share?
Please do, and also please, I didn't mention your names, so please introduce yourself as well if you weren't planning to already.
Like we have a little intro on the slides.
Great, sounds good.
Share. Can people see my slides? Cool. So yeah, Shouheng and I are here to introduce Bagel to all of you. And what Bagel is an agentic toolchain for physical AI. Now, before I jump into this, thanks, Michael, for giving us a spot. And I know this is the first time that we're talking to this group. And one time we're actually talking to the group is that it never felt right for us to come here and talk to like an open working group about something when we didn't have an open source, a first class open source project to talk about. And for us, that was really, really important that we were not only just talking to you guys here about something that was open, but also something that was a first class sort of citizen for us. And really, just to introduce who I am and who Shouheng is, my name is Arun Venkatadri. This is Shouheng Yi. And we came from the self-driving industry. And we've seen a lot of robotics and non-robotics problems in our lives. And we were just thinking, really, if we removed VC hype and we removed all of the things that is said on LinkedIn, which is probably just a good idea for most people generally, and we just thought about where the industry actually was. We think that the industry is still in its infancy. And there's another truth that we came across, which is that robotics is hard. So for the people on this call and the people who will watch this call later, you know, what you're working on must always feel like a moonshot, because everybody in robotics is trying to solve frontier problems and long tail problems that, you know, crop up every once in a while. And it's just very difficult. Building a robotics business in 2025 is still incredibly hard. And I always say this, like every startup in this space is like its own little space shuttle trying to get to the moon. And what we were really thinking about, Shouheng and I sat down, we said, okay, well, what are the things that could make robotics less hard? And we came up with a list. And then we crossed things off the list that we didn't think we could really help with. And as that conversation evolved, what happened was we really, really arrived at a conclusion, which is that we still think that there's a lot of room in the tool chain. Now, whenever Shouheng and I talk, I think we always get back to the tool chain. That just might be our personal bias. But really, we think that the problems of the next 10 to 20 years demand more, and that we needed a chat GPT for physical data. And just generally, we're going to need better tools for the next 10 to 20 years to solve the problems that the industry is facing. And when we thought about what those problems are, the first is that there's a lack of open source tooling for things like analytics, event identification, data pipelines, troubleshooting. And we've also had a lot of recent AI advancements like LLMs, RAG, and MCP, but our tool, you know, the tools in the robotics industry don't really leverage them yet. And then there's no native integration and there's no native unification. So there's no, you know, using the LLMs with your physical data is actually not a natural thing to do. You have to do some things to actually make it work. And then the other thing is, when we talk about unification, the community comes up with great packages all the time to solve problems all the time. And there's no sort of unifying spine that you can integrate them into in order to make sure that these packages aren't just one-offs, to really make sure that we're driving the industry forward. And so what we wanted to really think about as we were thinking about those problems is we thought about what principles are we going to adhere to as we try to solve these. And there were four that came to our mind. The first was pretty obvious. We wanted to leverage AI. The second is that it had to be edge first. One of the things we had heard at Model Prime is that, you know, hey, I can't even get my data into the cloud. It's too large. So we had to solve we had to solve problems at the edge with being able to pre-process your data and being able to interact with your data there. And the other thing was that fell out of that was it had to be open source. No one was going to ever trust to run something on their robot or on-prem if they couldn't build trust by looking at the source. And so we really wanted to put trust first when we were thinking about this. And then this last point actually came from the Cloud Working Group. I know that you guys had a graph that you guys put up previously that talked about organizational maturity on one axis, then fleet size on the other axis, and how their needs evolve across that spectrum. And what we really want to do was listen hard to that and really provide full cycle support. So no matter where you were on that continuum, we could help you. If you were in R&D, great. If you were chasing a specific goal and you knew what it was, you're out of R&D, fantastic. We want to be able to help you. If you're scaling, we want to be able to help you. If you're troubleshooting, we want to be help you. You get the idea. And so what that led us to was Bagel. I'm going to show you guys a quick demo here. Can you guys see my terminal? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay,
no, that's the slide. Sorry, Arun, not the actual terminal. We can see the slide.
Okay, let's just see if we can fix that. Can you see my terminal now?
Not yet.
We are. It works until somebody's looking. As a great man once said.
That's very wise.
Yeah. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Great. So here there's a PX4 log that we loaded in. And if you just wanted to summarize the metadata of this log, you can do that pretty easily. So you can just ask it the question, can you summarize the metadata of that log? And it will actually spit out an answer for you and give you a nice summary of that log. Sorry, if you see something that I have to prompt that asks me to hit enter, I'm still not brave enough to run Claude code on my laptop in YOLO mode. But here you have a summary of the metadata of this log. And what we've done is we turned every robot into an MCP server so that you can integrate with, you can interface with your robotics data in natural language. So we have a nice overview here, which is very cool. But if you want to ask a deeper question, like what topics are in this log, you can do that as well. You know, if you've been changing your topic structure lately or something like that, you're not sure. Maybe you're looking at an old log and you don't remember what you guys logged at this time. This is something that comes up a lot, and you can see, okay, we have a lot of we have our topics here. We got a lot of them, and we have this vehicle IMU channel here that might come in handy later. But if we want to ask even another question, were there any errors you can ask that and get an answer as well. And the nice thing about this is it'll give you not just, yes, there were errors. It'll actually give you an answer that is, actually gives you a little bit more information than that. In this case, you know that this error happened 3 times, this error happened once. And if you want to go ahead and say, how could, oh God, am I typing today? How could I solve the ground connection error? You can go ahead and ask that question too, and it'll actually give you a list of steps to resolve it. And so you could try that, and we think that this is very handy again for that troubleshooting case that people spend a lot of time on, especially when it happens in the field, especially when it happens, either it's your customer that encounters the problem, or it's somebody on your team that's out in the field and maybe isn't an autonomy engineer, and they want to sort of get started with trying to resolve it as quickly as possible. Now, everything I've asked so far is a very defined question, but if you wanted to ask a more ill-defined question, yeah, go ahead.
The last one I don't understand at all, because the fix is outside of the data of the bag file. It requires, in this case, it seems to rely on knowledge that your probably LLM has picked up about PX4 outside of the bag. But the problem, of course, in robotics is the heterogeneity of the fleets, meaning that my robot looks very different from your robot because my errors look different. The way, like, a lot of errors are actually not thrown by PX4 itself or ROS, but some code of our own.
Yeah.
How do you? I mean, you don't have to answer that, but I guess what's on my mind as I'm watching is how do you avoid hallucinations where it will just tell you like, yeah, do this and that, but it's complete BS because it cannot possibly know the answer.
This is a great question. My only objection to this question, Kristen, is you didn't ask it slightly later to give me a really great segue onto the next slide.
Okay.
So the basically, really, we think that with RAG, using your own documentation, in addition to sort of like merge your sort of documentation internally with the response, we can solve it. Is it going to solve it 100%? I can't make that guarantee in today's world, but that's the step in the right direction that we want to take. So yeah, and so like just one last part of this demo here, and then which is, if you wanted to ask a more ill-defined question like, were there any hard landings detected in the So if you want to ask if there are any hard landings, it'll actually give you an answer back too. And the nice thing about this answer is not only will it tell you that there were no hard landings detected, it'll actually also give you the sort of like relevant factors of that landing, so you can give it the eye test as well. And so this is that's where we are today in terms of letting you interface. We can solve a lot of these problems and at least get them to the next level with this. But really, when we start thinking about what the future of this looks like, so we do want to integrate more LLMs. We support Cursor today, actually. So if you go through the tutorial in the GitHub repo and you use Cursor, you can integrate Bagel with Cursor today. And that's a really nice combination. And as far as the MCP tools, we wanted to build more MCP tools for troubleshooting, anomaly detection, calibration, fleet control, and integrate more models. Like people have asked us a lot for multimodal search, so being able to understand, hey, my vehicle ran a red light, and we think we can get there by integrating more about like VLM models and things like that into a search capability. When it comes to fleet controls, we want to be very careful about this because anytime you're using non-deterministic means to interface with your robots, it can get a little bit dicey. So we want to figure out if there's any guardrails that we need to put up before we launch that. I should put an asterisk next to that item, actually. We do want to support more Robolog formats, and we want to get pip install working very soon. And we also want to integrate with Foxglove and Rerun. We've reached out to Foxglove. They've been very supportive. We haven't talked to the Rerun folks, but we'd like to do that this week. And so that's kind of where we are. And then the other piece of this is RAG, Christian, which you mentioned, which is that we want to try to, as much as possible, let people customize those responses. As far as we're rolling, people have seemed to have reacted pretty well to this in the community. I made this slide last week. We're now at 220 GitHub stars, and actually today is 1 month for us. We launched on July 11th. And we've showcased this to a few robotics companies as well. That's informed the roadmap that you've seen on the last slide. And really, we want to listen to the community when we're building this, and that's a mix of voices like the people on this call, and also industrial voices as well. And it's going to take all of us to do this. If you want to help, you can start a repo. You can file an issue or open a PR if you want a certain feature. You could also become a contributor, and if you just want to fork and go on your own journey, we'll support you any way we can. And that's really all I have, and I'm happy to take questions.
Great. I'll kick off the questions. So I had
Sure.
a couple. One, where is the AI running? Are you doing it on the local machine? Are you doing cloud API calls? Are you doing it at the edge?
Right, Bagel doesn't host any large language models by itself. So we're exposing MCP server. Therefore, we can let a large language model to interact with those servers. So yeah, there's no model hosting there. Given that said, if you are really concerned about hosting your data locally, we're actively working on integrating some open source local model like Llama, stuff like that. So there's no data sending needed.
Sorry, so it's in the cloud, but you have the option to use a local model if you want. Is that right?
Bagel itself, it's running in container, so it's totally local. But when we are interacting with the large language model, as you saw in the demo, like running Cloud Code, that is connected to Anthropic, right? But we're like model agnostic. We work with Anthropic Cloud. We are working with Google Gemini and the Cursor, and in the future OpenAI. So we're not really tied into any type of large language model. So bring your favorite model, bring your API key, and you can interact with Bagel with your favorite model there.
Great, thank you. I have a couple more, but I don't want to take up all the time. If anyone else has questions, feel free to jump in or raise your hand to let me know you've got one. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. The next one, I think you kind of answered it a bit by saying you support different LLMs, but I'll ask anyway, is can you get it to generate code or graphs or visualizations so that you can look at the data yourself? Because the honest truth is that I don't trust LLM maths out of the box.
You bet. I agree with that. And so the answer is yes, Bagel can do that, but the mechanism which does the actual plotting and the math is not Bagel, it's the LLM. I asked Bagel the question like, hey, can you plot the XYZ position to me? And what underlying mechanism is that your LLM model take that prompt and ask Bagel for the appropriate data and then generate a graph and get it back to you. So really, we are a tool provider. We're not really a LLM.
That's cool. And, so you've already got it. Sorry, Aaron. Please go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. And this, by the way, this issue has come up before. This is actually one of the first issues that came up when we launched Bagel, like one of the first concerns that people had. So we've been listening really, really intently, and we want to make sure. And I think Shouheng and I have said this explicitly to each other. One thing we will not tolerate is bad math in the long run. We really, really have to solve that and make sure it's crisp. And if one thing I would really love is if people find out that there's bad math going on, please file a bug ticket.
And I will say is that if this is let's say a type of reporting is super mission critical, right? You can extend Bagel with your own function and saying, hey, this is the exact calculation I want to do, and expose that as a MCP call. And then Bagel can use that particular function that you provided and do the actual math.
That makes sense. Thank you. And then the last one I had was so you talked about the 4 key parts of Bagel, the second being edge first, right?
Mm-hmm.
This looks like it's running on a normal computer or laptop or so and so on, right? Is there anything running on the robot to help support this? What's running at the edge, I guess is the question.
Right. So our design philosophy is everything's has to be running in the Docker container, right? Therefore, you can bring Bagel everywhere. You can bring on a robot if you want. If there's robot, there's enough compute on the robot. Or oftentimes, if you're operating a forklift fleet, so to speak, in the warehouse, there's often a on-prem server, right? You can bring a Bagel on the on-prem server and does the compute there. And most of the time, those on-prem servers are pretty beefy. Or you can deploy Bagel in your own cloud, and but at that point, you have to think about how to transfer data. So we previously, right, for a lot of the cloud platform for robotics, you had to have this centralized place where you put all your data and so that you can use the platform. We just think that approach is a little bit taxing for most of the robotics company. And we want to package the software and bring it to the cloud in the format of containers.
Great, thank you. That's everything I've got for now. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a technical question. Arun, one of the things that you said on your slides that got me really excited was when you pointed out that LLMs are really a poor fit for structured numerical, robot data. you even showed some topics there. And I think that's really, it's a nice summary of of my main criticism of AI these days, that everybody got excited about ChatGPT and now they're just throwing LLMs at everything, including things that have nothing to do with L, right? It's a large language model. This is not language. This is like structured data. So the way that I see it, and we had Benji here from Roboto AI a few weeks ago, there are sort of two approaches to dealing with data, if I can describe it like that. There's, ingest the whole back into something that is generally intelligent, like LLMs, and ask questions about it. That's not quite what you do. What you're doing is more structured. I'm just trying to sort of delineate a spectrum here. And then there's the, let's call it the traditional approach, where you ingest the data into a structured database with schema and so forth, where you know exactly what every value means. You can do what I would call, you can prove theorems. You can, for instance, prove that a value doesn't exist, which to an LLM is virtually impossible. And other, so it's very precise, but it's also very stiff. Right, and LLMs are the opposite of stiff, but unfortunately never 100% accurate, and they may even hallucinate. So, my question now is, where, like, you're presenting a snapshot after 1 month of very impressive work. Really, I mean, this is pretty fantastic for the short time that you've done. But what I'm curious about is, where are you going to go? Meaning that how much are you going to peel the LLM onion? This is the main question. Are you planning to train your own transformer or otherwise model that doesn't actually operate on language tokens, but on something else?
It's something we've talked about very deeply. So the answer is we've thought about it. We haven't found a way to do it just yet that we think is like the obvious way to go do it, that everybody would be happy with. So we're still, I would say, like, for us, that's still in the R&D phase. But it's something we're genuinely thinking about. What would an LRM look like, or even an SRM, a small robotics model? Like, just can we do things that are very, very specific and do them very well? And so it's a topic of very wide discussion. I mean, by wide, I guess it's just Shouheng and I right now. But it could be a wider discussion, guys. Join our Discord, and go ahead, Shouheng.
Oh, I want to offer some thinking on that. You're totally correct, right? However, the difficulty is that, as you pointed out, right now for those models, they're ingesting text data and outputting text data mostly. For sensor data, there's not a specific model trained for those, especially for dense time series, right? Vectorizing those dense sensor series with arbitrary structure. I haven't found any paper or any mechanism to do so, and I don't think the community or the research community have taken, at least I'm not aware of any unified methodology for doing so. There are like narrow research area that are dealing with time series and how to vectorize it, how to make it into embedding. But I think it's still in the early phase. But my philosophy is, like, if we can take advantage of the technology for today and it can provide some value, why don't we offer that to the community? So that's how I think about this.
Sorry, since you touched on that, I wanted to understand exactly a bit, but I'm a beginner with MCP, so I as far as I understand, yes, you expose a service, you expose some services, you have Claude in the example that you have in the documentation, using the API. So you have it run it locally, you use the API to talk to the LLM, and then you expose some local services through the Docker container. I wanted to ask you, what kind of tools, or rather, can you go a bit deeper in the architecture of things? So what kind of tools do you expose to the LLM to summarize the data, or what are you offering? Because I saw the demo, but I want to know how it works.
You bet. So very super high level overview of the MCP. It basically offer two mechanisms to interact with your data with a large language model. One is tools, the other is resources. Resources meaning that, hey, I'm exposing some data. Think about there's a resource called database, right? That is something that the large language model can interact with, or a CSV file. A tool maybe have more side effect, meaning that, hey, I'm calling for something, and then maybe I send the email and stuff like that. That's what you call tools. So in terms of in this space, robotics, we are thinking maybe this is not well thought through, but Arun and I mentally categorize it as read functionalities and write functionalities. For read, no side effect. We read back files, we read ulogs, we read telemetry data, and then we can surface information, right? That is a big category of things. And the other categories of things is write. And write can have different spectrum. For example, right? If I just drive around a robot in a warehouse a little bit, and I detect hard edges, I can, in principle, write an MCP tool for camera calibration, and in the prompt and say, hey, can you calibrate this camera for me for this forklift, right? Therefore, it change all of the intrinsics and extrinsic of the camera, and that is the right functionality we're thinking of. Another more, I would say, more complex scenario would be, hey, I know that there's an accident happened on the L4, and please avoid that and just go back to your charging station. Forget about the pallet, right? If you can offer that command, your forklift will just navigate back to the charging station. So those are the right functionality we're thinking about. And there's something in between, right? For the, well, you can also integrate a lot of the models, like as Arun mentioned, like the video language model, right? Oh, detect traffic cones on the street of San Francisco, right? If you're thinking about self-driving use case, you will basically run every frame of your from the camera image and detect traffic cone. And there's quite a lot of things that we can do here. But the problem is, I'm not a calibration expert. Arun, I mean, we were not expert in multiple domains, right? Therefore, if we can rally the community to contribute to the tools and have a central place where people can share and interact with LLM, I think I will gain the superpower from the community and vice versa. So that's our head is at.
We want more Batmans in the community, no superpowers, but they have a lot of cool stuff that lets them get a lot of things done.
Okay, because I misunderstood, because from the demo, from the example, I always saw it as at least I saw it as a tool that you use on a bag, so on some data that is not live. But what you were mentioning now is you want to expose a robot as an MCP server, and then add tools to the MCP servers, add functionalities to the MCP server as a robot that an LLM could leverage in real time.
Exactly. And then, because we have to start with the read, because read seems to be the lowest hanging fruit and the most safest bet at the moment.
And sorry, go ahead, Giovanni.
No, I just wanted to say that's really cool. We were recently working on a survey on MCP works, on MCP for robotics, and there's a few people that are trying this actually. That's quite an interesting topic to deal with at the moment. It's very relevant.
Yeah, like I say, like we just thought about like what are the most advanced things out there that we can deliver to people to sort of let them solve hard problems, and definitely this approach seems like, at least right now, like sort of like I don't want to say the obvious one to take, but at least like one that's very high leverage that could help a lot of people today. The one thing I think, like when I think about the rights, I will say if there's anything that keeps me up at night, it's the write functionality and MCP and LLMs. One thing that I think we should, as a community, talk about more is if we're going to be issuing, commands to robots in the fleet, via tools like this, like what are the guardrails we should be putting up to really think about safety, you know, and even just property damage, right? You know, because the one thing I really don't want is I don't want Bagel or any effort in the community or outside the community to be known as this thing that caused a lot of damage, be that to people or otherwise, right? So, you know, if there's one area where I really think we would really love community input, not just, you know, community input, and even from the safety community, I think it's that, because that's something that, you know that that's a direction that a lot of people are interested in, but I'm not entirely sure, at least in today's world, like what that fully looks like.
I don't have an answer, of course, but I have the idea that I was working with when working with LLMs is never to expose low-level functionality of robots. So you always you don't expose command velocity, you only expose goals in nav2. So at least the safety should be kept by nav2, and the same for manipulation and this thing. But that's obviously the easy answer. I'm sure there's much more dangerous stuff.
Just to pile on that, one of the things I've also been thinking about is when you issue like a command, like a behavioral command, like maybe the other answer is, like, the standard is that you have to issue the command and also explicitly what it should not do with the same command. So there's a lot of I'm sure that's also a relatively superficial answer to what is a very complicated question. So there's a lot of thought here that hasn't been done.
I sometimes utilize the analogy of I mean, just an AI as a person, right? You know, sometimes, you know, when 10 years ago when people were talking about assistants, right, you could think about a personal assistant and how they would act. I would approach that question actually the same way here, and I would ask, which person in your organization does this does Bagel not replace, but, you know, give superpowers or clone or whatever, or make more powerful? And then I would give the agent or Bagel or the MCP server the same privileges as that person, or less, because I mean, you've seen this, right? Once you deploy a fleet of whatever 20 or more robots or 100 robots, you will have a lot of different personas in your framework. Of course, there's going to be the admin, then there's going to be developers, then there's going to be third-level support, which are, you know, often company employees. Then you might have first and second-level support, and those may be, you know, outsourced 24/7 call center, or they may be channel partners that you've trained and certified on the administration of your fleet. And with every layer, like in the progression that I just described, you lose privileges, right? Like the level 1 support, yeah, okay, fine. They can do things such as relocalize the robot when it's mislocalized. Like it's more of a whitelist than a blacklist, meaning they have specific things that they are allowed to do, but by default, they're not allowed to do anything.
Yeah.
And then privileges based on things that you typically have issues with and that you want them to do. And then obviously, in the end, you know, it's the opposite, right? An admin is not restrained, and then some of these people just have quote unquote blacklists, things that they're not allowed to do. Which is a good segue to my other question, which is how, like, who do you envision the user of Bagel to be? Are you thinking of this as a developer tool, an operational tool that actually runs with the robot and actually serves? It's a leg to stand on, right? Like, it's something that actually is used to operate the robot in the way that you want, or is it an operational tool for, like, field ops, the people who are basically charged with making sure that the robots do the right thing, but they're not actually developers?
Yeah.
Arun,
So
can I?
go
Sorry.
ahead, Shouheng.
Let me. Fantastic question. Very insightful. So we actually have thought about this topic quite a lot. And every time we came out, talk about this topic, we're thinking about data flow. I think data flow is a tier structure. For example, at a very ground level of the tier, you have robots, right? And in the warehouse, and who are acting with the robot, those are the operators or field engineers, right? And then you have, and those data get aggregated into a site level, right? A deployment site, who are in charge of that type of data, usually the site managers and the engineers, right? And then if you think about multiple sites, and you will aggregate into a company level, organization level structure, and who have access to that, usually developers or management, etc. And based on where you are, as Arun mentioned, we want to have full cycle support. We want Bagel to be useful in every step of the way. And as you said, permission control is a big part of it, because management might not want the field engineer to have certain access, etc. And that is something that we need to build. We're not there yet. However, we need to prioritize our target audience at the moment, right? Because we can't do everything at once. So the first audience we are trying to engage with is the developer, who have a broader access, right? Once we have enough engagement of the community, and the community are starting to self-sustain and develop, we can now trickle down to, or maybe trickle up to the other tiers and expose permission there. Eventually, I think, in my mind, there need to be a work-wise configuration file or YAML file that can list the permissions. And then, according to your role, you can interact Bagel at different levels. So that's my head-over thinking. Arun, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's more or less what I was going to say. I mean, really, our goal is full cycle support, which is to help everybody in a robotics organization. But obviously, it's just the two of us right now, and we kind of have to hone in and sort of pick personas. And our goal eventually, though, is to service everybody, even data scientists and analysts that work at these companies.
So yeah, I guess our dream, Arun and I have, is like a CEO of a robotics company and say, how many fruit did I pick? And just send out that report to your client. And that will be you just imagine what it's gonna take for the day. You're gonna hire somebody to write a custom script, build a data pipeline, put it in the cloud, and build some front end, and then it's just too much.
And just a couple, and off of that, another thing that Shouheng and I talk about a lot is this concept of edge reducing the data volume at the edge, and only sending back what you need to the cloud. I can tell you firsthand that the ingest bills for data that you don't use alone is just significant, right? So really what we want to do is we want people to, as much as possible, send back data that they need to the cloud, or if they need to answer an operational query like what Shouheng just brought up. But that's something that we think about quite a bit.
But this brings up exactly the fleet management that you didn't really expand so much about before. So, because the example that you gave now was, okay, a single Docker container on a laptop and I imagine that Docker container in the long run will run on all the robots. And then how do you build fleet management? Will you do an MCP server on each robot, and then an aggregation, or I wanted to understand how you imagine the fleet management.
So I'll start. I'll kick off and answer here, and Shouheng, maybe you can just dovetail off the end of it. I don't think we have, at least in my view, from the product side, I don't think we have in a way, a clear path to that. The other thing we're also very conscious of is that there are fleet management solutions out there that work really well. So the question then is either how do we augment those or deliver something that's truly unique? And so Christian's the expert there, I think. So maybe at some point we could jam Christian, but so that's where I stand with it. Shouheng, I don't know if you had other ideas. I don't think we talk about fleet management that much.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're not the expert in fleet management, right? This is an invitation for everybody here, and pleading for help, really. So we can solve this problem together without solving it individually at different companies.
Thank you.
If we have time for another question, I have to put my business hat on and ask, what's the business path here? How are you gonna? So I love open source, right? We all love open source, but what I love even more is open source that survives. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we all know the reality of open source. If there's no, you do need a business model. I mean, as
Sure.
people, as much as people are, Richard Stallman kind, no, what's his name? Idealists who think that, we should all, work for free. It doesn't really work long term. So before betting on some open source, people typically want to know whether this is going to be around for a long time, and that depends a lot on what's the money behind it. Can you share a little bit on how you're approaching this? And this kind of ties back with my question of what's the user, because that determines the value to the customer and the pricing.
Sure. So like the way we look at it is, if we can solve these problems at the edge, that's a huge unlock for, there's still cloud services that have to be, that still fall out of all of this, right? So like, what we're doing over on the Model Prime side with, what the HEEX people are doing, what other people are doing, those problems still have to get solved. But we do need we need to take it a step further and solve it at the edge to make those cloud services realistic, I think, for a large section of the industry.
That doesn't really answer my question. I mean, yes, I see the value, but
yeah,
how are you going to make money? How are you going to, how are you going to package it? And
there are, I think, I mean, maybe I wasn't clear about it. There's still aggregate data services, even if you solve these problems at the edge, that have to be solved, right? That have to be solved in the cloud. And we think that there's monetization opportunities there. So you can think of things like aggregate analytics. You can think of things like CI/CD. You can think of all of those sort of like downstream use cases that still have to happen, because one thing that you cannot do is move the developer to the edge. So there's still, we still think that there's a lot of monetization, a lot of money to be made on that side.
And right now, at the moment, if you want the honest answer, it's like Arun and I trying to figure it out as well. It's like 4 weeks in, and we're still need to put a lot of thinking on this too. But that's a fair question, Christian. Another thing I'm thinking about, maybe, hey, if you have private data that you really don't want to share with Bagel or etc., right? There needs to be a private cloud server there, and that is an angle. Or you have a set of MCP tools that is very specific to your problem and have no meaning to anybody else, and you don't want to share. There must be a private hosting mechanism. There might be an angle there, but again, right now we're focusing on building a community, and so that's where our head's at.
That makes sense.
And did that answer your question, Christian?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
So have you seen people using Bagel since, I know there's been a lot of stars and so on, and you've demoed to a lot of people. Are you seeing people actively use it, and how are they finding it? What are they using it for?
So we've seen people
Oh.
We've seen people use it. We've been getting bug tickets. We've had a couple people join the Discard server. We've had a feature request now too. So we've seen adoption, which is really exciting, especially in a very short span of time. We've also just gotten a lot of positive feedback saying this is really great, because before I would have to go and write a custom script to do this, and now I can just issue a command. So, it's removed hours of work for people. So that's kind of like what we've seen and heard on the usage front. I don't know, Shouheng, if you had anything else.
Oh, no, that's yeah.
Very cool. And then another one is, what do you want to see from a Foxglove or rerun integration?
So I think when we think about that, we know that a lot of people use Foxglove or rerun as their first look, I guess, as to what's going wrong with a log. What we're hoping is that we could actually Bagel could be the first thing that you use to sort of isolate what's wrong in your log, and then your visualization workflow after that is unchanged, right? So just really trying to focus you down to the parts of your log that are really, really important, and just trying to save people time. That's the first sort of like thought that I have.
Okay, so you're not trying to release a Foxglove console with Bagel built in or something?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, there's integrate.
I don't know.
There's a natural.
This is such a. Thank you for bringing it up. I had never thought about that, but if Foxglove want to like integrate this right to their customized pop-up window, I'm all for it.
Well, hopefully they'll see this and decide it's a great idea.
Yeah, like I said, what I was going to say was if there's a natural integration point that makes sense, we're all for it.
Yeah, great. I was also thinking it's a very silly idea, but I thought when we were talking about access control and what can Bagel do, the right mechanism, the ultimate right mechanism would be to allow Bagel to rewrite the robot software. Just fixing problems on the fly. That would be crazy. I'm not suggesting
that's actually not so far-fetched, right? I mean, not maybe it's crazy, you know, on the surface of it, but when you think of the larger context of let's take the persona who's using Bagel, right? Like they're making these queries, they want to know what's going on. So there's two different things that these people do, right? There's the output, which is after they do the analysis, they usually do change the code, right? So exactly like you're saying, normally it's a person though. And then on the input side, usually what they do is, well, they either get better at working with the data that they already have, or they instrument their code because they don't have enough visibility into the issue that they have. They wait a little longer, right? Deploy it to the fleet, come back a week later, look at the data again, and then make a decision as to what they need to change. This is where it's very interesting to think of this as a holistic loop, because clearly, you know, if you can control both sides, well, I'm understanding the input. I understand that it's not sufficient for me to make a decision, yes or no. Let me instrument the code, wait a little longer. Here's more data. Now I can make a decision. In theory, this is something that an automated AI agent could do. Now, here's the key. The main achievement that the person does in this thing, the main task that they have, is to say, I don't know. This is insufficient data. And I'm going to be I'm watching this very carefully, right? Not just you guys, but in general, right? Like LLMs suck at that. Let's just be honest. They don't know to say, I don't know. They're very, very, very bad at that. In fact, they are trained never to say it in some ways, right? So this proof of non-existence, I'm super curious about that.
I think like the way I think about it, Christian, is outside of just what that specific case, I always think that like we're using non-deterministic means to try to achieve very specific things, and we just have to be very careful. And so that whole thought stream, you know, it's going to take some time for us to think about all the implications of it and a good way to do it. I do think that that's probably the direction that eventually we'll end up in, but I think we would just, like I say, there just has to be a lot more thought and a lot more guardrails around it, and then maybe we need a breakthrough on the LLM side to really do it properly.
Yeah, I actually think that you had the right answer on your second slide, and that is LLMs are not the answer. You do need to train a model on a to me, the issue is that language creates too much ambiguity, and that's a lot of the source of both hallucination and imprecision. So I think what I'm waiting for in this whole everybody uses the word physical AI now and physical intelligence, obviously, after some very big funding rounds of companies with the same name, and we're all encouraged by that, but for the right reason. But I think the real breakthrough, or the real ChatGPT moment for robotics, is really only going to be once we drop the idea of using LLMs and somebody trains we find a language. It's still a language, just not a spoken language or like a natural language for robotic data, and train a big model on it. Doesn't even have to be super big, right? I mean, there's some very encouraging signs. You've probably seen them from Electric Sheep too, right? Their models are famously very small, actually, and they do pretty well. And of course, they can, because they are not trying to understand the world, which LLMs indirectly try to do. They're only trying to understand themselves, which is the robot. And I think that will actually be a key moment when we get closer to this idea of guardrails. The point of guardrails is that they are hard, right? You cannot pass them.
I think I think I touched on that before when we think about maybe like small robotics models as a way to advance this. I think if you're looking at, when you think about large, and then you're talking about the physical world itself has a lot of things going on in it, and I think it's going to be very hard to solve for everything. But if we had a small robotics model that solved, just maybe just a few things really well, a few pain points really well, I think that that's actually a step in the right direction.
I'm not. We're almost out of time, so I'm not going to start arguing. But my point of view is actually very different. I actually think
Okay.
that the physical world is much easier to understand because guess what? The laws of physics are not only are they already encoded, not only are they unambiguous. Like I actually don't personally understand why we haven't achieved this yet, right? Because it's so much simpler than English. And maybe that's just because I'm a nerd, right? And I prefer precision, and I get lost in like the ambiguities of language. But I actually think there's a huge opportunity just around the corner.
Christian, I'd love to have this discussion long form with you. Let's make some time and let's chat more. I'm sure Shouheng would love to be there, and anybody, actually, we'll make that open for anybody who wants to join, but doesn't have to be here.
That sounds like a good place to wrap up. So thank you both so much for coming and talking to us. It was really good to see what you've built, and it is really impressive. I'm wondering if we can make a working group session out of giving it a try ourselves, but I think we'll discuss that offline and announce it separately for the next meeting. I wanted to post a link to your repository for anyone on the call that hasn't had a look. And also, you mentioned a Discord server. I didn't know there was a Discord server. Is there a link to that you can post as well?
It's in the documentation, but we can yeah. Shouheng, do you want to toss that link in the group chat?
I've just found it.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
So thanks so much for giving us a slot, and thanks for giving us time to present. We're really excited to work more closely with you guys.
That sounds great. Definitely. So open invitation to the community to join in, as Shouheng and Arun were saying. So thanks again. Thanks everyone for coming, and see you next meeting.